What just happened on Monday Night Raw wasn't a storyline. It was a declaration of war. Roman Reigns, once the unshakable centerpiece of WWE dominance, didn't walk into that arena to remind anyone who he is. He walked in because everything he built is crumbling around him. Paul Heyman, the man who once stood at Roman's side, holding the golden microphone like a dagger at everyone else's throat, has betrayed him. Again. And this time? He's not just backing one superstar. He's building an army. But what sent the WWE Universe into an absolute frenzy wasn't just Roman's sudden return. It was what happened backstage minutes later. Roman Reigns stormed into Triple H's office and made the unthinkable demand, bring back Jon Moxley. You read that right. Not Dean Ambrose. Not the lunatic fringe. Roman didn't use the sanitized WWE version of his brother's name. He said Moxley. Loud. Raw. Real. For the last few months, WWE has been playing with fire. Subtle shifts. Shocking alliances. Heyman working behind the scenes with Seth Rollins again. Braun Breaker getting fast-tracked through NXT with an eerie kind of purpose. Bronson Reed crushing his opponents without remorse, leaving bodies in his wake like he's prepping for war. But what nobody predicted was what Heyman would do once Roman stepped away to handle personal matters. What started as whispers about a new direction quickly turned into full-on speculation. Is Paul Heyman starting a new faction? And then? Confirmation. First Rollins. Then Breaker. And now Bronson Reed? It's no longer speculation. It's a movement. Heyman's assembling killers. He's not rebuilding the bloodline. He's building something darker. Colder. Smarter. A modern wrestling empire that has no loyalty to anything but power. And if Roman doesn't act fast, he's going to get devoured by the very machine he used to run. Why did Roman say Moxley? Here's the question on everyone's mind. Why Moxley? If Roman wanted backup, there are easier calls. He could have summoned Solo Sikoa or even pulled Jey Uso back from exile. He could have played the family card again. But that's not what this is about. This isn't about family anymore. It's about trust. Loyalty. Brotherhood forged in war. It's about the one man Roman's never truly gone to war against. The one man who knows what it means to fight the system from the outside, not from within. Jon Moxley. You could feel the crowd pause when Roman said his name. And then the chants began, Moxley. 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 It wasn't just a nostalgia pop. It was war drums. It was the crowd telling WWE what they wanted, what they needed, to see. Because they know what's coming. Roman Reigns' request is more than a storyline. It's a metaphor. A cry for help. A warning shot to creative. A shot across the bow at AEW. It's a message to fans burned out by recycled rivalries and half-baked heel turns. Let's get real. If WWE dares to entertain this angle, we're stepping into uncharted territory. We're talking about potentially breaking the biggest unspoken rule in modern pro wrestling: don't say the other guy's name. But Roman just did. On live TV. On Raw. And nobody bleeped it. That's not a slip. That's a signal. Let's rewind. Paul Heyman has always been two things: a genius and a survivor. He doesn't bet on losers. He doesn't build from sentiment. He builds from strategy. By aligning with Seth Rollins, he reclaims the architect. By pushing Braun Breaker, he secures the future. By drafting Bronson Reed, he brings brute, unshakable force. And with those three, he builds a faction with terrifying potential. One that doesn't talk about honor. One that doesn't play family politics. One that doesn't need a head of the table because they burn the table down. Heyman's faction doesn't just threaten Roman's power. It threatens his entire identity. Why now? Why this moment? The timing is not coincidence. Roman has been away. Rumors flew. Injury? Personal break? Negotiation stall? Maybe. But one thing is certain, WWE was shifting without him. And not gently. Monday Night Raw has been turning into something else entirely. It's faster, meaner, and less dependent on traditional stardom. It's less about tribal chants and more about unpredictability. So Roman's return had to be explosive. It had to matter. And it had to disrupt everything in motion. The only way to do that? Say the one name WWE doesn't want spoken. And now, here's the real kicker. Moxley never officially closed the door. He slammed it, sure. He burned bridges. He cut ties. He walked out of the Performance Center and into AEW with a vengeance. But if you read between the lines in his interviews, one truth remains consistent: I'll always have love for Roman and Seth. That was real. It wasn't gimmick. It wasn't marketing. It was war-bonded brotherhood. And now Roman's knocking on that locked door, knowing full well it might never open. But if it does? If Moxley walks back through the gates of WWE, not as Dean Ambrose, but as the war-scarred, chaos-driven Jon Moxley? Everything changes. So, buckle in. Because over the next chapters, we're breaking down everything: the rise of Heyman's new empire. Why Bronson Reed's debut is more than just another faction member. The raw history behind the Shield and why this could be WWE's most emotional storyline yet. How AEW factors into the equation, and whether Moxley is even available. Real backstage politics. Real tension. Real emotion. This isn't just a story. It's the start of a war. The Raw stage lights were dimmed. A hushed silence fell over the crowd, rare for a Monday night, as if something was about to break. Then, the music hit. Not a remix, not a theme tweak, not a tease. Roman Reigns' music, the same one that's been echoing across WWE for years. The crowd didn't cheer immediately. They paused, shocked. Then the roof blew off. Roman Reigns had returned. But this wasn't the same man who had left a few weeks earlier, quietly exiting Raw with vague reports of handling family matters. This Roman was different. His walk was colder. The usual calm confidence was now fused with something else: anger. Not a performative scowl or a kayfabe expression. Real fury. The camera zoomed in on his eyes, and there was no hint of the smug arrogance we'd seen throughout his title reign. This was a man with unfinished business. He didn't stop for the pyro. He didn't acknowledge the fans. No hand in the air. No slow strut to the ring. He walked with purpose, straight down the ramp, cutting through the show's rhythm like a scalpel. Commentary struggled to keep up. Corey Graves: ladies and gentlemen, I don't know what to say. Roman Reigns is here, but something is off. Michael Cole: he doesn't look like the tribal chief we knew. He looks like a man who's been pushed too far. Inside the ring, Roman grabbed a mic, but didn't speak. He just stood there, breathing heavily, scanning the crowd. The camera cut to signs: "Acknowledge me, Where's Solo?" and "Shield Reunion." The crowd, sensing something unfiltered was about to spill out, went silent again. And then he said it. "You think this is a game?" He wasn't addressing the crowd. He was talking to someone backstage. Triple H, most likely. Maybe Heyman. Maybe the entire locker room. His voice was tight. Controlled rage. His left hand clutched the mic, knuckles white. His right hand, once used to hold up a championship, now hung low like it was ready to swing at anyone who walked down the ramp. "I built this damn empire. I carried it through pandemics, injuries, through every rookie they thought could replace me. And while I was gone for 1 minute, just 1 minute, you all let him run wild again." The crowd didn't need context. They knew he meant Heyman. "You let him crawl out from under my shadow and build a new one. One that doesn't care about family. One that doesn't care about this business. One that only answers to him. He looked directly into the hard camera now. Triple H, get out here. No music hit. No reply. Roman lowered the mic and waited. 30 seconds passed. Still nothing. You're hiding now? Hiding while he stacks his empire like it's ECW all over again? Still no movement from backstage. Then Roman's voice dropped to a whisper, but somehow carried all the way to the nosebleeds. Bring him back. Confused murmurs ran through the crowd. Bring who back? Roman answered before they could ask. Bring back Mox. The arena detonated. No exaggeration. People stood up in waves. Kids screamed. Adults grabbed their phones. Fans who hadn't cheered Roman in years suddenly chanted his words in unison. Moxley. 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 This wasn't an homage. This was Roman firing a flare into the sky, signaling he needed help, not from any bloodline member, not from a desperate NXT call-up, not from some scripted legend. He wanted Jon Moxley. The shift in tone was deliberate. He didn't say Dean Ambrose. He didn't sugarcoat it. This wasn't a storyline nod. This was a man asking for the return of a Real fighter, a brother from war, a chaos agent who had left the company under a cloud of controversy and truth. Backstage, the camera cut to chaos. Producers scrambling. A camera crew running toward Triple H's office. The camera outside the office caught Roman pushing the door open without knocking. Triple H stood up from behind his desk, clearly not expecting this confrontation on live TV. What the hell are you doing, Roman? Triple H said. Roman pointed his finger directly at him. You've let Heyman build a damn fortress. You think I don't see it? Seth. Braun. And now Reed? He's planning something and you're letting it happen. Triple H didn't flinch. You think I control Heyman? He plays his own game, Roman. Always has. You knew that better than anyone. Yeah, Roman said. But I used to have leverage. I used to have bloodline muscle. That's gone. You let him gut my kingdom. Triple H leaned back. You want me to stop him? Roman nodded. You want me to fight your battles? Roman shook his head. No. I'll fight them. But I need one thing from you. Triple H stared, waiting. Roman's next words came out heavy. I want Jon Moxley. Triple H froze. For a full second, he didn't breathe. You're asking for the impossible. I'm not asking, Roman said. I'm telling you. Make it happen. Back in the arena, the crowd was still buzzing. Chants of Moxley battled with chants of Tribal Chief. People were texting. Tweeting. Streaming live reactions. Social media erupted in real time as YouTube clips of Roman's mic drop hit millions of views within minutes. Reddit threads titled "Roman just said Moxley on live TV" exploded. TikTok accounts cut mashups of Shield moments with Roman's new demand. The camera cut to Paul Heyman, watching from a private suite with Seth Rollins and Bronson Reed beside him. His eyes weren't surprised. They were satisfied. He whispered something to Rollins, who nodded. Was this the plan all along? Force Roman to call for backup and watch him shatter the wall between WWE and AEW himself? Rollins smirked. Bronson Reed didn't smirk. He just cracked his knuckles and stared at the screen like he was ready to rip apart whatever ghost Roman summoned next. The commentary team tried to regroup. Michael Cole, this is a moment we never thought we'd see, Roman Reigns publicly requesting the return of a man who walked out of this company years ago. A man who said he'd never come back. Jon Moxley. Corey Graves, this could be bigger than any feud we've seen in the modern era. Forget the bloodline. Forget evolution. We're talking about breaking walls between rival promotions. If Triple H even considers this, we're in dangerous territory. Backstage again, Roman walked out of Triple H's office, not waiting for a yes. Just trusting, or threatening, that it would happen. He passed crew members. No eye contact. No smiles. Just that focused stormwalk he used to do before matches, now reactivated with purpose. Back in the arena, the fans weren't finished. Moxley. Moxley. This time, a small detail caught attention. One of the production monitors behind the commentary desk briefly flickered. A static interference. Nothing major, just a 2-second glitch. But enough for one frame to appear. A face. Grainy. Bearded. Eyes full of fire. Fans on Twitter paused the clip. It looked like Moxley. And then it was gone. Just enough to keep people guessing. Roman Reigns didn't appear again that night. He didn't need to. He'd thrown the first punch in what would become one of the most unpredictable and emotional battles in WWE history. He wasn't just fighting for pride. He was fighting for his legacy. And he wanted Jon Moxley in the trenches beside him. That night, the tribal chief stopped playing games. He went to war. The camera cut backstage moments after Roman Reigns left the ring. Raw was still on the air, but the arena felt like it had emptied into the hallway following him. Fans were watching the Titantron more intently than the ring. Nobody cared what segment was next. Everyone was waiting to see what Roman would do next. He didn't storm through the corridors like some unhinged madman. His movements were methodical. Controlled fury. Like a general surveying the battlefield before the invasion. People parted as he walked past, producers, trainers, even security. Nobody stopped him. They'd seen that look before. They knew better. The cameraman following him wasn't part of the plan. You could tell by the way the shot shook slightly when Roman glared directly into the lens, as if daring him to keep rolling. He did. Roman didn't care. Let the world see it. He turned a corner and approached the office door labeled Executive Talent Relations. No knocking this time. No pause. He shoved the door open. Triple H stood behind his desk. No suit jacket. Shirt sleeves rolled up. He looked like a man in the middle of 10 problems, and number 11 had just walked in. There was a pause. Not the kind meant to build suspense. The kind that happens when two men know they've been heading toward this moment for months. Roman stepped forward. You let it get this far, he said. Triple H didn't answer right away. Roman repeated himself, stepping closer. You let him build it right under your nose. Triple H exhaled. You think I wanted this? You didn't stop it. I don't stop anything anymore, Roman. That's not how it works. You know that. This place moves whether I like it or not. Roman shook his head. No. You let Heyman run wild while I was gone. You let him put his little death squad together. And now you're sitting behind that desk like it's all part of the plan. Triple H circled the desk slowly. I didn't give Heyman permission to start anything. But I'm not naive. I know what he's doing. I'm watching him. Roman snapped. Watching? You're watching him take what I built and twist it into his own kingdom. You gave him the green light. You let him poach Rollins. You let him throw Braun Breaker at me like a wrecking ball. And now you let Bronson Reed, join him? That wasn't a message. That was a warhead. Triple H raised a hand. Roman, no, Roman said, pointing directly at him. You don't talk yet. You listen. You brought me back. You put the machine behind me. You made me the centerpiece. You said this whole thing doesn't move without me. But now you're building new engines while mine's still running. That's what this is. Triple H sat back in his chair. Leaned forward. Locked eyes. I'm not replacing you. Roman laughed once. No humor in it. You already did. Silence again. But this one had teeth. Triple H folded his hands. So, what do you want? Roman didn't hesitate. I want Mox. Triple H blinked. You want who? You heard me. Triple H sat back like Roman had just said something sacrilegious. You can't be serious. I've never been more serious. Roman, Moxley's not here. He's not under contract. He's not even, bring him back. That's not how this works, Triple H snapped. This isn't the Attitude Era. I can't just pick up the phone, throw a contract across the table, and expect someone like Moxley to crawl back because you asked for him. You know where he is. You know what he said when he left. Roman stepped in closer, his tone low but deadly. I don't care where he is. I don't care what he said. I need him. I don't want some patched-together team of NXT hopefuls. I don't need mercenaries. I need a brother. Triple H leaned forward too. And what happens if he says no? Roman didn't blink. Then I go through this war alone. But if he says yes? We tear the whole thing down. Triple H stood up, walked over to a small locker behind his desk, opened it, and pulled out a file. He tossed it on the table. Legal paperwork. The kind that usually never sees a camera. Real-world contracts. Negotiation notes. Do you know what it took to even get Rollins to sit in the same room with Heyman again? Do you know how much heat that caused? Now you want me to light that fire again and call the one guy who spit in this company's face and walked away? Roman stared at the file, not the man. I'm not asking you to fix everything. I'm telling you that if you don't make this happen, you'll be watching the fallout from the parking lot. Triple H looked away. Not from fear. From calculation. You want Moxley, he said. Not Ambrose. Not a redemption arc. Not a handshake on SmackDown. Roman nodded. I want Jon Moxley. The guy who doesn't care about rules. The guy who fights for blood. The guy who burns everything down if you corner him. Triple H sighed. I don't even know if he'd take the call. Try anyway, Roman said. Triple H looked at him like a man seeing the edge of a cliff. You realize if we do this, we open every door we've spent the last 3 years trying to keep shut. We give AEW all the ammo they need. We risk the brand. Roman's voice dropped. This isn't about brands anymore. This is about survival. You let Heyman turn my kingdom into a battlefield. If you don't want me to burn it down myself, then give me the only guy crazy enough to fight beside me. Triple H sat back. No answer. No promises. Roman turned and walked to the door. I'll be in the ring next week, he said without looking back. Make the call. The camera lingered on Triple H, his face a knot of frustration, caution, and something else, curiosity. Back in the locker room hallway, murmurs were spreading. Superstars on their phones. Crew members whispering. Word was moving fast. Roman wasn't just back, he was rewriting the rules. Meanwhile, in a dark corner of the backstage area, a monitor buzzed with light static. A grainy image flickered once again. A silhouette in leather. A voice, distorted by audio glitch, whispered one word, brother. And then it cut to black. The confrontation was over. But the fuse had been lit. Who was Paul Heyman's new faction? Nobody in WWE plays the long game like Paul Heyman. He doesn't make noise for the sake of attention. He doesn't collect talent just to stack bodies. He engineers. He recruits like a general in wartime, not like a manager playing favorites. And what he's built over the last 2 months is not a stable. Not a team. It's a war machine. What started as rumors, Heyman scouting backstage, watching certain matches with more intensity than usual, whispering to producers after Raw went off the air, soon took the shape of something real. At first, people assumed it was Heyman just angling for more creative pull. He's always been that guy. Always politicking. Always backstage with 3 backup plans. But this time felt different. This time, he wasn't just pulling strings. He was setting traps. The first move was Rollins. The announcement dropped like a hammer. Not in the ring. Not during a pay-per-view. It came quietly. Rollins had requested managerial support and Heyman had signed on as his advocate. Most people thought it was kayfabe. A plot device. Something that would last a week, maybe 2, before Rollins super kicked Heyman into next Tuesday. But it didn't stop there. Their chemistry wasn't forced. It clicked. And not in a nostalgic way. This wasn't about reviving memories of the Authority or playing on their past as adversaries. It was about cold, tactical synergy. Heyman called Rollins the best psychological weapon this company has. And he wasn't wrong. Rollins wasn't interested in titles anymore. He was interested in control. Chaos. And Heyman gave him the leash he needed to let that chaos loose. The next move was even quieter, Braun Breaker. There was no announcement, no contract segment, no debut match with fireworks. Just Braun appearing more and more frequently. First backstage. Then ringside. Then delivering sudden, violent run-ins without music or warning. Within 2 weeks, he was tearing through talent like he was trying to prove a point, not to the fans, but to someone backstage. That someone was Heyman. Reports began leaking from insiders. Braun was being mentored by Heyman. That was the word used. Mentored. Not managed. Not trained. Mentored. Like a chosen successor. Like Heyman saw in Breaker not just raw power, but an opportunity to shape a new kind of champion. One without the tribal baggage. One without legacy issues. One who would listen. And he did. Braun Breaker wasn't cutting promos. He wasn't smiling for the cameras. He was destroying people. And when he stood next to Rollins, fans began to see what Heyman was doing. He wasn't forming a group. He was assembling contrasts. Pieces that filled each other's gaps. Then came the final, explosive piece, Bronson Reed. If Breaker was Heyman's war tank, and Rollins was his precision missile, Bronson Reed was the bomb dropped from orbit. Reed didn't just debut into the faction, he landed like a meteor. On that night's Raw, he interrupted a main event match between Cody Rhodes and Finn Balor by steamrolling both men with no allegiance, no hesitation. 2 minutes later, he stood next to Heyman on the ramp, and the crowd understood, the faction was real. No name had been given to them. Not officially. That was deliberate. Heyman didn't want them branded like the Bloodline or the Judgment Day. He wanted them unspoken. A force that didn't need titles or names to inspire fear. And it worked. Within days, fans began calling them by a different name anyway, the Syndicate. It spread online like wildfire. Reddit threads. Twitter hashtags. TikTok fantasy booking videos with captions like "What if the Syndicate faces a reformed Shield at WrestleMania?" Nobody knew if WWE had coined the name, but it stuck. And Heyman didn't correct it. Because that's the thing about Heyman. He lets others name the beast. He just feeds it. Individually, each member served a purpose. But together, they created an asymmetrical threat that WWE hadn't seen in years. Seth Rollins was the strategist. The charismatic manipulator. The psychological architect who knew Roman's weaknesses better than anyone, because he had helped build him. Rollins wasn't loyal to Heyman, he was loyal to results. Heyman was just the man with the map. Braun Breaker was the speed and strength. The next generation hybrid. A walking experiment in what happens when you combine NXT hunger with old-school ruthlessness. He didn't talk because he didn't need to. His message was pain. Bronson Reed was the wall. The immovable force. The one Heyman didn't need to convince with promises. He brought Reed in with one line, "Your enemies have the spotlight. I'll give you the shadows." And Reed thrived there. Together, the three men formed the perfect flanking maneuver against everything Roman represented. They weren't family. They weren't legacy. They were ideology. Power without sentiment. And in Heyman's eyes, that made them unstoppable. Backstage, the locker room had already taken notice. Superstars whispered about the trio's growing influence. Others started keeping their heads down, unsure whether they'd be Heyman's next target or his next offering. The faction didn't hold gold, yet. But they didn't need it. They weren't chasing titles. They were chasing disruption. And now, with Roman Reigns trying to reclaim his throne and asking for Jon Moxley to return, the lines were drawn clearly. One side wants to rebuild what was lost. The other side wants to burn it all down. And at the center of it all stood Paul Heyman, smiling, watching his machine come to life. Bronson Reed didn't ask for the spotlight. He took it. For weeks, he had hovered around the periphery of Raw, lurking, smashing, retreating. Fans noticed, but WWE didn't push him hard. Not at first. He was the kind of performer who didn't need long promos or backstage vignettes to get attention. His presence did the talking. His actions closed the deal. But Paul Heyman saw something deeper. While the rest of WWE overlooked him or filed him under mid-card muscle, Heyman saw the missing piece to his syndicate. Not a showman. Not a legacy name. A destroyer. A weapon that didn't just wrestle but overwhelmed. The shift happened fast. Reed had gone from being another violent force on the roster to becoming something else entirely. A moment. A threat. It began on a random Monday, with little build-up. Cody Rhodes vs. Finn Balor was the main event. The kind of match that would usually end with a roll-up or interference to continue a feud. Instead, Bronson Reed broke the match in half. No music. No warning. He bulldozed Balor midair, caught Cody on the rebound, and flattened him with a tsunami splash so vicious it left the crowd stunned into silence. And then, with both men down, he walked up the ramp, and Heyman was waiting. Arms open. Grinning like the devil in a suit. Reed stepped beside him. Didn't shake his hand. Didn't pose for the cameras. He just stood there. And the syndicate was complete. What made Reed's addition so chilling wasn't just what he did. It was how he did it. In a company that thrives on drama, catchphrases, and crowd pops, Reed didn't care about the audience. He didn't care about applause or boos. He cared about domination. Period. And Heyman knew exactly how to use that. While Rollins strategized and Breakker executed, Reed enforced. He was the one who didn't ask questions. The one who didn't overthink. If Rollins whispered take him out, Reed didn't blink, he crushed. Reed wasn't just muscle. He was intimidation incarnate. The guy who made locker rooms go quiet when he walked in. Who made top guys look over their shoulders. Who didn't showboat after his matches, because the message was already sent. And the timing of his arrival wasn't a coincidence. Reed's debut as Heyman's third man came only days after Roman Reigns had hinted at returning. WWE's internal scheduling sheet, something fans rarely see, had Roman's appearance listed as TBD. That was enough for Heyman. He fast-tracked Reed's reveal. Because Paul Heyman didn't just want to prepare for Roman's return. He wanted to cripple it. There's a method in Heyman's madness. Reed's skill set is tailor-made to counter Roman's power style. Roman overwhelms his enemies with strength and psychological pressure. He slows the pace. Controls the environment. But Reed welcomes that pace. He thrives in close-range combat. Doesn't lose control when cornered. Doesn't panic when the match slows down. In fact, that's when he's at his most dangerous. Roman would try to stalk Reed, only to find himself being stalked back. And Heyman was already planting seeds. In an exclusive WWE.com interview days after Reed's Raw ambush, Heyman said this: "Some men seek titles. Bronson Reed seeks silence. The silence that comes after someone stops moving. The silence that follows destruction. That's why he's mine." That quote made headlines not for its poetry, but for what it implied. Bronson Reed wasn't gunning for championships. He was gunning for legacies. And Roman Reigns, with his bloodline in ruins and his empire on fire, was walking right into his path. Inside the locker room, people began to connect the dots. Reed wasn't just another addition to Heyman's faction, he was the chess piece Heyman would use to physically dismantle Roman Reigns. If Breakker was the young lion, and Rollins was the mind, Reed was the juggernaut. He didn't need a microphone. He didn't need a nickname. He didn't even need to explain his loyalty to Heyman. His silence was his answer. And that's what scared people the most. This wasn't a faction built on brotherhood or revenge. It was built on function. Every man served a role. There were no egos clashing. No one fighting for dominance. Because Heyman had engineered it that way. And now, with Reed on board, Roman's chances of outmuscling or outlasting Heyman's faction had dropped significantly. Because let's be honest, Roman's always relied on force. Yes, he's played the mind games. Yes, he's adapted over time. But his core advantage has always been his size, his control, his physical dominance. With Reed in the picture, that dynamic shifts. For the first time in years, Roman is looking up at someone stronger. Hungrier. Meaner. That changes everything. Backstage at Raw the following week, Roman walked through the corridor and passed Reed near the gorilla position. No words were exchanged. Just a stare. Reed didn't move. Roman didn't either. The only sound was the tension folding in around them. Then Roman walked on. Slowly. But the message had been delivered: "We're not afraid of you anymore." That's what the syndicate represented. No fear. And Bronson Reed was the embodiment of that principle. He was the living, breathing signal that Heyman wasn't hedging his bets, he was going for the kill. WWE had never seen a faction like this before. No laughs. No internal power struggles. Just dominance, calculated and deliberate. And now, Roman wasn't just facing enemies. He was facing predators. And the biggest one didn't speak. He crushed. Before there was the bloodline. Before there was the Judgment Day. Before "Acknowledge Me" became a global chant, there was the Shield. They didn't enter WWE like typical newcomers. They invaded it. In 2012, 3 men in black tactical gear marched through the crowd at Survivor Series and tore apart everything the company thought it understood about factions. Roman Reigns. Seth Rollins. Dean Ambrose. They weren't legacy. They weren't indie darlings. They were soldiers. They fought as one unit. They talked like one voice. They moved like a hit squad. And they didn't care about applause. Only domination. The Shield wasn't just a gimmick. It was a revolution. They debuted as hired mercenaries for CM Punk, but even that quickly took a back seat to what they really were, a warning shot. WWE had never built a trio quite like them before. They weren't the New Day. They weren't DX. They weren't a tag team with a sidekick. They were equal parts destruction. And they were effective. From day one. Within weeks of arriving, they were taking out John Cena, Randy Orton, Ryback, The Rock, and The Undertaker. Not in safe, scripted heel turns. But with beatdowns so ruthless it blurred the line between storyline and real. Crowds didn't boo them because they hated them. They booed because they didn't know how to stop them. They were feared. They were respected. And eventually, they were loved. But power always fractures. In 2014, it happened. Seth Rollins hit Roman Reigns and Dean Ambrose with a chair that would change wrestling history. The group broke apart. Rollins became the architect of betrayal. Ambrose leaned into chaos. Roman went solo, groomed to be the new face of the company. It should have ended there. But it didn't. Over the next decade, the Shield wasn't just a memory. It became a ghost that haunted every feud. Every reunion. Every championship runs. Why? Because no matter how many times they tried to move on, no matter how many times Roman and Seth and Dean tried to become their own men, the world wouldn't let them forget what they were together. In 2017, the first reunion attempt happened. The pop when all three stood side by side again? Deafening. They didn't even have to wrestle. Just the sight of them, standing tall in the ring, was enough to reignite something in fans who remembered what it felt like when the Shield walked through that crowd for the first time. But injuries, backstage politics, and timing kept derailing any sustained reunion. Then came Dean's heel turn. Then came Moxley. In 2019, Jon Moxley walked out of WWE. And not quietly. He didn't leave with handshakes and thank you. He left with a flamethrower, launching shoot interviews and dropping pipe bombs on everything he thought WWE had become: scripted, fake, shallow, and creatively suffocating. To Roman and Seth, it wasn't just the end of a friendship. It was a funeral for the Shield. Roman continued to climb, transforming into the tribal chief. Seth spiraled through personas: Monday Night Messiah, visionary, Joker-esque cult leader. And Moxley? He went to war in AEW. He bled. He fought. He grew more dangerous. They all evolved. But even as their paths diverged, their origin was always the Shield. It was the thread that kept tying them back together, either through respect or rivalry. And now, Roman had done the unthinkable. He'd invoked that name again. He'd reached across the gulf, not to Dean Ambrose, but to Jon Moxley. Not for nostalgia. Not to reform a brand. But for war. Because Roman knows one truth better than anyone. The only man who's ever truly had his back wasn't his cousin, wasn't his advocate, wasn't even Seth. It was Mox. Through everything, betrayals, championship runs, roster splits, the one constant was this: Moxley never turned on Roman. Not once. Not when it was popular. Not when it was profitable. Not even when he left the company. Their bond was never about convenience. It was forged in suffering. That's why Roman chose him now. Because he's not looking for loyalty. He's looking for someone who will burn the world down beside him. Someone who doesn't blink in chaos. Someone who won't ask questions. Someone who doesn't care about brand politics or contract clauses. And that man is Moxley. What Roman is proposing isn't a reunion. It's a resurrection. Not of the Shield as a gimmick, but as a philosophy. Brotherhood through violence. Unity through destruction. A force that doesn't follow rules, only results. But the question remains. Can that version of the Shield exist in today's WWE? Can Moxley even return? Is Seth Rollins, now allied with Heyman, willing to watch his past become his present enemy? Can WWE, corporate, polished, brand-safe WWE, handle the return of its most chaotic son? Or is this just a desperate move by a king who knows his kingdom is falling? Whatever the answer, one thing is certain: the Shield never truly died. It's been waiting. Waiting for a reason. Waiting for war. And now, that war has arrived. Where is Jon Moxley now? Jon Moxley isn't hiding. He never has. Since the day he walked out of WWE and became the bleeding heart of all elite wrestling, Moxley has made one thing clear: he didn't leave because he couldn't cut it. He left because he refused to conform. He walked out of a multi-million-dollar system at the peak of his fame and walked straight into the wilderness, barbed wire in hand. But now, with Roman Reigns saying his name, his real name, on WWE television, The world is suddenly asking a question no one thought possible: where is Moxley right now? And could he actually come back? The answer, at face value, seems obvious. Moxley is one of the most consistent and vital forces in AEW. Since debuting in 2019, he's held the AEW World Championship multiple times. He helped launch and carry the company through its early growing pains, through the pandemic, through backstage chaos, through locker room wars. He leads the Blackpool Combat Club. He bleeds every other week. He fights as if he's still trying to prove something. And in a way, maybe he is. Moxley's grind hasn't slowed. If anything, it's intensified. He's not a part-timer. He's not coasting on name value. He shows up. Every week. In every match. Against every kind of opponent. And that's the first hurdle. Because he's not just some former WWE guy working indies or making guest appearances. He's a central pillar of AEW. Which makes Roman's request all the more wild. Or brilliant. Because if Moxley ever did show up on WWE programming again, even once, it wouldn't just be shocking. It would be tectonic. Not since the days of WCW and the Monday Night Wars has one name carried this much cross-brand impact. CM Punk's WWE return after a decade was massive. Cody Rhodes jumping back to WWE made waves. But neither involved someone being name-dropped in real time, live on air, before any deal was even rumored. Roman isn't just asking for backup. He's calling down lightning from another universe. And the timing? Couldn't be more interesting. Because right now, Moxley's role in AEW is shifting. Quietly. He's been taking fewer main event slots and more showcase matches. He's still dominating, but he's also mentoring. Letting Wheeler Yuta shine. Giving Danielson the spotlight. Holding the foundation, but not carrying it alone anymore. He's a cornerstone, but maybe not the face. And in wrestling, nothing signals a change like that kind of adjustment. No announcement. Just a subtle shift in air pressure. The kind Heyman thrives on. Behind the scenes, AEW has been under pressure. Injuries. Locker room tension. Executive shakeups. It's not falling apart, but it's not bulletproof either. Moxley, ever the straight shooter, has made no secret of his frustrations with backstage politics. In interviews, he's fired shots at egos, management, and what he's called children playing business. He even threatened to walk away mid-contract, not for more money, but for more peace. And WWE? They've been watching. Triple H is no fool. He knows Moxley is one of the few wrestlers alive who can walk into any company, any ring, any storyline, and own it without saying a word. But the real question isn't whether WWE wants Moxley back. The real question is, would Moxley ever say yes? That's where things get murky. Moxley has always said he has no interest in going backward. He stated on record that his time in WWE was creatively suffocating, that the scripted promos felt like reading a cartoon, that his run there nearly broke him mentally. His departure was personal. Raw. But time changes everything. And there's one exception he's always made. One name he's never disrespected. Roman Reigns. Even after leaving, Moxley has consistently expressed admiration and love for Roman. Not as a character. As a man. In one podcast, he said, Roman's a warrior. He's a survivor. He's family, forever. He didn't say that about Seth. He didn't say that about Vince. He said it about Roman. And now Roman's asking for him. Not because of nostalgia. Not because of a reunion tour. Because Roman is standing in the fire, and needs someone who thrives in it. Moxley might say no. He might not care. He might see it as a trap, a marketing gimmick, a way for WWE to get buzz off his name. But if he even thinks Roman is in real trouble? That's different. Moxley lives by a code. No rules. No corporations. Just loyalty. And if Roman is telling the truth, if this isn't some setup, but a real call for help, Moxley might answer it, not for Triple H, not for WWE, but for Roman. And that changes everything. Because even a one-night return would ignite the industry. Ratings. Headlines. Interviews. AEW tension. Fan theories. A single match. A single run-in. One ambush. One stare down. It would dominate the landscape for months. And if Moxley ever decided to do more than that? To walk back through the forbidden door and stay? Then Heyman's syndicate doesn't just have a problem. They have a war on their hands. Of all the shocking developments in WWE's current war zone, none hit quite as hard as this, Seth Rollins aligning with Paul Heyman. To understand how surreal that is, you have to go back. Back to the nights when Heyman was the voice behind Brock Lesnar, and Seth Rollins was the man trying to tear down everything Lesnar stood for. Back to when Rollins called Heyman a parasite on Raw, when he swore to never be anyone's puppet, when he preached about burning down the machine. Now? He's standing next to the machine's architect. So, what happened? Simple. Seth Rollins evolved. He stopped pretending he was the future and started acting like the one pulling the strings. Somewhere between the visionary promos, the Monday Night Messiah days, and his reign as the company's most unpredictable performer, Rollins realized something that Paul Heyman has always known: morality doesn't win wars. Strategy does. And no one strategizes better than Heyman. Their alliance didn't begin with fireworks. It started in shadows. A quiet meeting backstage. A strange moment where Rollins, fresh off a loss, walked past Heyman and didn't sneer or scoff, but nodded. Weeks later, Heyman was seen watching Rollins' matches from gorilla position. Then came the promos. Rollins started speaking less about the crowd. More about power. Less about destiny. More about cleansing WWE. Not with light, but with precision. And that's where Heyman stepped in. Because if Roman Reigns is the bloodline king, if he rules through myth and fear, then Rollins is the heretic. The rogue prince. The one who doesn't want the crown, but wants to melt it down and forge something new. Heyman understood that. He didn't try to control Rollins. He didn't even try to steer him. He did something far smarter. He amplified him. Heyman gave Rollins space to unleash the darkest parts of himself. The cerebral tactician. The venom-tongued manipulator. The man who burned down the Shield and never once apologized. With Heyman whispering in his ear, Rollins became more than a performer. He became an executioner. And make no mistake, this is a calculated betrayal. Of Roman. Of Moxley. Of everything the Shield once represented. Because Rollins doesn't want to relive the past. He wants to erase it. Heyman didn't pitch this alliance as nostalgia. He pitched it as a revolution. Not through chaos. Through order. Ruthless, calculated order. What makes their bond terrifying is that it isn't built on friendship. It's built on aligned interests. Rollins wants to reshape the landscape. Heyman wants to control the machine. Together, they're doing both. And what stings even more? Roman should have seen it coming. This isn't the first time Rollins stabbed him in the back. It's the second. But this time, Roman isn't shocked. He's angry. Because he knows exactly how dangerous Rollins is when he's not seeking approval. And now, with Heyman backing him, Rollins doesn't need approval. He has resources. Influence. Protection. He doesn't have to scream to be heard. He just has to wait. Wait for Roman to show weakness. Wait for Moxley to hesitate. And when the moment comes, Rollins won't hesitate. He'll strike. Because that's who he is. And Heyman? He'll be smiling when it happens. Because in the chessboard of WWE, Reigns is the king, Moxley the rogue knight. But Rollins? He's the bishop that always comes from the side. Quiet. Diagonal. Lethal. With Heyman's guidance, he's not just playing the game. He's rewriting it. The second Monday Night Raw went off the air, it was clear, this wasn't just another episode. It was the spark. Backstage, the energy was raw, no pun intended. You could feel the shift in everyone. Camera operators, agents, even the talent. People weren't talking about their next match or the upcoming pay-per-view. They were asking one thing, did he really say Moxley? Because that moment, Roman Reigns, standing in Triple H's office, looking him dead in the eye and demanding Jon Moxley's return, wasn't just a promo. It was a line crossed. It was something fans, and even some wrestlers, never thought would happen. And now the entire company was reacting in real time. The first to speak publicly was Corey Graves, whose voice cracked slightly when he signed off the show with, "I've been calling this man's matches for years. But tonight, I saw a Roman Reigns I've never seen before, and I don't think any of us are ready for what's coming." The next morning on the bump, Graves expanded. You have to understand the weight of what Roman did. He didn't just break character. He broke the fourth wall. The name Moxley was never supposed to echo in a WWE ring. Not in that way. Not ever. But now? It's real. We're in uncharted territory. Fans lit up social media. On Reddit, the front page of r/squared circle was nothing but Reigns and Moxley threads. TikTok exploded with reaction videos. YouTube channels pushed instant rewatches, slow-motion breakdowns, theory crafting about the AEW contract situation. Twitter trended globally with #Moxley, #Shield Reunion, #BringBackMox, #Romance Heyman. Even AEW fans, fiercely loyal to their side of the tribal war, couldn't help but weigh in. For the first time in years, both companies were in the same conversation for the same reason, a moment too powerful to ignore. But it wasn't just the fans who were watching. Superstars were, too. Later that night, WWE posted a series of unscheduled interviews, catching wrestlers off guard and getting genuine, unrehearsed responses. Kevin Owens approached backstage, Moxley, huh? If he comes back. I don't know, man. We might need to reinforce the entire arena. That guy doesn't come in quietly. He comes in swinging. Sami Zayn, just finishing his match, Roman's not stupid. He doesn't call out Moxley unless things are about to get very bad, very fast. But I've known Heyman long enough to know this, he's always 2 moves ahead. Always. Rhea Ripley, seated alone, watching the replay on her phone, if this is the war Roman says it is. I just hope he knows the cost. But the most chilling response came from Paul Heyman himself. Unscheduled. Unprompted. He requested a live mic in the darkened interview area. No background. Just him, his voice low, eyes locked into the lens. Roman Reigns is desperate. You can smell it. It's leaking from his pores. And in his desperation, he has made the most foolish move of his entire reign. He's trying to bring back the past, to protect himself from the future. But let me make this perfectly clear. He stepped forward slightly. There is no past. There is no shield. There is only now. And right now, Roman Reigns is alone. And scared. And surrounded. He walked off without another word. Not long after, Seth Rollins posted a simple tweet, "You always needed him more than I did." Instantly, over 100,000 likes. Meanwhile, AEW was silent. No comments. No tweets. No press statements. Not from Tony Khan. Not from the official AEW account. Not from Moxley. Nothing. That silence was deafening. And fans ran with it. Conspiracy theories bloomed. Some believed the deal had already been struck behind the scenes. Others thought Moxley's silence was part of a slow burn invasion angle. A few diehards believed Roman was working everyone, and Moxley wasn't even in on it yet. But the most popular theory? That Jon Moxley was already watching. Already thinking. Already choosing his moment. And that when he walked through that curtain, if he walked through that curtain, he wouldn't need a promo or pyro or even an entrance theme. He'd just appear. Like a shadow. With fists ready. To make the syndicate bleed.